Good day. This is the Spiritual Artist Podcast with Chris Miller. And, I want to share something with you. I had such an incredible response last week to my asemic writing/drawing exercise. It actually went viral on YouTube that I thought, maybe I need to be showing more exercises as well as interviewing great artists about their process, which I love to do. Love to talk to people about their process. And next week, I have a great one coming up. But I thought I'd share this exercise with you because it was very primary and important to me as a spiritual artist. And first, I want to share what was probably one of my greatest mentors, someone that I really admire. And as you can see, I read a lot, and I've read a lot for many years about spirituality and new thought thinking, everything that you can imagine. I love spirituality. I love the idea of it. But this guy, Eckhart Tolle, some say Eckhart Tolle, wrote The Power of Now. And I'm sure if you haven't read this book, you really need to get a copy because it was so key, and it continues to be key in how I think about life. One of the greatest concepts that he introduced in this book was the concept of being the watcher. Being the watcher. And what that means is learning to step back in yourself and watch the little self, what I would call the little Chris, how he's doing. What is he doing? What is he doing? How does he operate? It's a really interesting practice to watch your thoughts. So when I first started painting, I would go in and I'd have a really great experience one day. And then I'd come back to paint a day later and I'd have a horrible experience. I mean, sometimes I would even rip a hole in the canvas, I kid you not, that I get so frustrated. So I started leaning back and saying, what and how do I work? How do I work? And I realized that there were these thoughts running through my head. And Eckhart Tolle, he talks about that. He talks about that we aren't our thoughts. Our thoughts are put in there by the way we were raised, by society, by our family, our parents, by the country we live in, by the religion that we're raised in. All those thoughts are constantly going around in your head. And I realized that when I painted and had a good day, I was managing those thoughts, or I was actually ignoring those thoughts. And when I had a bad day, I was letting them get to me. And I will be honest with you, some of those bad days, some of the thoughts were quite literally, I would be painting and I would be doing something and maybe something would look not quite right. And I'd hear this voice, oftentimes a parent in my voice, maybe my mother's voice saying, you can't be an artist. You can't make money being an artist. And suddenly my entire body would freeze up and I'd get angry and I would just go, and that thought would play over and over again in my mind. So what today's activity is going to be combining a spiritual practice with a painting practice. So it's something that I did for years in order to watch my thoughts. I'm going to share with you this wonderful quote from Eckhart Tolle. It's from his book. So when you listen to a thought, you are aware not only of the thought, but also of yourself as the witness to that thought. Does that make sense? Also of yourself as the witness to that thought, meaning you are not your thoughts. It's an interesting concept because we think we are. So let me show you what you might actually outcome in this exercise. This is an example of one of my paintings that I actually did through this exercise. It's accomplished through a variety of layering with brayers and paint, and actually came out of me watching my thoughts, like learning how to watch my thoughts. So I have made a sheet. It's on my website at Spiritual Artist Today that you can print out, and it gives you these supplies, and I'll put this in the ticker tape here, but I would tell you to get a canvas that you can work on or Bristol board. And actually this exercise works better on paper or waterproof paper than it does on canvas because paper absorbs some of the water and it's beautiful. But I need you to look at something. If you've never used these before, this is a brayer and they come in a variety of different sizes. My favorite actually is almost the tall 1 inch, and it's made by Speedball, these brayers. These are a way that you can move the paint around on your canvas, and it's great for mark making. That's what you're going to do in this exercise. I'm going to have you put some paint down. I'm going to have you move it around, but all the while you're going to watch your thoughts. So the idea here is it's not about finishing the painting. And it will finish, trust me. But it's not about that. It's about learning to watch what you're doing in your head when you work. So you also will need some fluid acrylics. Golden makes these beautiful fluid acrylics, but you can use any brand. The reason fluid is nice is it moves around better on the canvas or the paper, but you can also use regular acrylics. They're thicker. They're going to give you a different feel, a different look, a different layering technique. You might even want a small bottle, spray bottle of water. Some people recommend staying away from too much water when you use acrylics, but you might want to mist it occasionally if you want to move this around. You obviously bring some brushes. And I want you to print this sheet out, or at least have a piece of paper next to you. And I want you to write across the top, parking lot. Okay, what is a parking lot? A parking lot is a place you put next to you while you're working. When those thoughts come into your mind, you just write them down. Did you hear that? You just write them down. Get them out of your mind and go back to work. So if I'm sitting here and I think, oh my gosh, I can never make money being an artist, I go over, I write it on the piece of paper, and then I get back to work. Does that make sense? You don't want to let thoughts pull you from presence. So this is an activity of presence where you're going to listen and watch your thoughts, and you're going to sit back and go, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting, all the thoughts? Also, I have found that a parking lot is sometimes it's just a to-do list. You might be working creatively and something comes to mind. Oh my gosh, I forgot to buy milk at the grocery store. Write it down, because to-dos take you away from who you are. To-dos are for later. So the most important thing with all these supplies is that you designate an hour of time to sit in your studio. If that's too much, 30 minutes of your time to sit in the studio uninterrupted, where you're not going to jump up and go do something, get distracted, answer a question, answer the phone, put the phone away, far, far away. In fact, I better check mine's far, far away. Okay, it is. Put the phone far, far away, because you're going to practice presence and writing your thoughts. So I'm going to switch to my screen, and you can see I'm just going to give you a bare bones intro to this. You can expand this in any way you want, but I want you to see how I started doing this originally. So I'm going to see if I can share my document camera here. Okay, and so this is my hand. Here's my brayer, and you can see what all you have to do. All I'm asking you to do is spill some ink on there. Don't worry, you're not trying to make it perfect. It's just a mess of ink. And take one of your brayers and just move it around. And what you're going to see, which I love about this activity, by the way, do you see the lines and everything? You get these wonderful lines, and you're moving the ink around on the paper. This is where you can see, if you added water or something, you would even get more movement. But it's giving you something to start with, some pattern that you're going to look for. Now, if in order to make it more interesting, I would recommend using maybe 3 colors in the beginning of this. This is a thicker acrylic. What's neat about a thicker acrylic is it will want to sit on top. It will, as you can see, it sits on top of what I did before. But you can see, as I move these things around on this paper, I'm getting this wonderful texturing effect. And then here's what you're going to do with this activity. You're going to take your brush, and this is a matter of taking away elements. You can use a white paint or a solid color that you've already used. In this case, I'm going to use this bright blue, the cyan that I have here. Dip it, and you just start finding things that you like. For example, this here is beautiful texturing. So what I do sometimes is I might isolate that. Now, I'm rushing this a little bit, and I probably should let it dry a little bit before I do this, because I don't want it to move around too much. But you know what? There's no right or wrong. What's important is while I'm doing this, while I'm sitting here finding lines to build off of and etch and cut out, my mind is going and I can watch it. So it's not so important about what I'm doing here. This is almost like a doodling practice, almost like the Yosemite drawing. You're just doodling right now. But what it's doing is it's letting me kind of think and watch who I am and what I'm doing. A great thing here, and I don't think I have a good color for it, is to take a white and use the white to start subtracting areas. But what I want to carefully caution you about on this practice, let me see here. I want to carefully caution you to not get stuck on trying to make it into something. Don't get stuck on trying to make it look good. Now, I talk about this in my book, Spiritual Artist, that you do want to find beautiful pieces of this and keep them and isolate them, or notice where something looks beautiful and try to reproduce it maybe somewhere else. but don't think about the composition at this point. Don't think about what it's going to be. Don't think, oh my gosh, I'm wasting canvas. All those thoughts, by the way, you think something like, oh my gosh, I'm wasting canvas, write it down. Write it down. So this leads me to what a spiritual artist is. And I've really wanted to define this for you. People have asked me, well, what is a spiritual artist? A spiritual artist is not a thing. It's a practice. It's an exercise in practice. It's practicing consciousness and presence in everything you do. A spiritual artist practices consciousness and presence in everything they do. So I will equate this to, I love this example because it makes it, what is spiritual? What is spiritual? Spiritual is something that exists, that's true, a spiritual truth, but you can't touch it. It's not material. It's not of this realm. It's not a material thing. For example, I can feel love, but I can't give a box of love to somebody, can I? Love is consciousness. It's in the space of, it's spiritual. It's the truth. We all know that love exists. We've all felt it. We've all felt the lack of it. It exists, but do you see it? Do you see it anywhere? No, you don't. So I would tell you that love is like a spiritual truth. It is a spiritual truth. And it's like spirituality in the sense that it just simply does not exist in the material realm. So as a spiritual artist, you're going to start practicing with the thoughts that are going on in your head. The thoughts that are going on in your head, they don't exist. They don't exist in the material realm. They're in the ethers of ideas. Those thoughts can hold you back from being the person you want to be and the artist you want to be. If you start listening to those negative thoughts, you can never make money as an artist. Oh my gosh, I have to buy milk. All those thoughts will pull me from being present in the now. And I want you to practice being present in the now. Okay? So this activity is about being present in the now. And I would invite you to, you don't have to have a brayer, but boy, these are cool. And you can even explore as you proceed with putting some textured element and braying over it and picking back up from what you've done. I'll show you that later. What we're focusing here, more importantly than technique, is consciousness. I'm trying to focus on how you think about life and realizing that you are more than the thoughts running through your head. You are an individualized expression of spirit. And you're here to create. And we create by first starting in that world, in the world of ideas, in the world of love, in the world of thought. So I hope this activity excites you. I want to be honest with you. I've done this for years. It's a great meditative tool. It's something you can go back to. Even if you have a style that you like, go do it and then stick this in every once in a while. It helps calm you. It's a calm meditative practice. But I will tell you, ultimately, the funny thing is you do get some beautiful things can come out of it by adding and subtracting shapes and colors. You can find beauty in this exercise, but it's almost on a subconscious level. I don't consciously try to make that happen. I just let it unfurl. So I would ask you to follow this channel, and I'm going to start putting together a whole series of these exercises that teach you a spiritual practice as well as a painting technique, and you can work them together. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section. I really do try to answer those questions for you. I thank you for following me. I'm thrilled that everything's going so well with this channel, and I want to encourage you and remind you that you are indeed a spiritual artist. Go create. Thanks.